I think I didn't do anything wrong, just let an old friend be part of my life. But now, after receiving divorce papers and watching my family turn against me, I wonder if maybe handing my secrets over to my husband's lawyer wasn't so harmless after all. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The evening light filtered through our apartment windows as I sat curled up on the couch, my phone buzzing with another text from Rowan. Simon was in the kitchen, the sound of dishes clinking echoing through our home, while our 8-year-old daughter Clara worked on homework at the dining table. "Mum, can you help me with this math problem?" Clara called out, her voice cutting through my concentration. "In a minute, sweetheart," I replied, my fingers dancing across the phone screen as I responded to Rowan's message about his latest work drama. He always knew how to make me laugh, especially when Simon seemed so distant lately. Simon appeared in the doorway, dish towel in hand, his dark hair slightly disheveled from the long day at his graphic design studio. "Who are you texting? You've been on that phone for the past hour." "Just Rowan," I said casually, not looking up. "He's having issues with his boss again. You remember how difficult his work situation has been." My husband's jaw tightened slightly. "Eulalia, don't you think it's a bit much? The constant texting, the late-night calls. Last week I woke up at midnight and you were whispering into the phone in the bathroom." I finally looked up, meeting his concerned gaze with what I hoped was an innocent expression. "Simon, you're being ridiculous. Rowan is practically family. We've been friends since college, and he was your best man at our wedding, for crying out loud. He's going through a rough patch and needs someone to talk to." "That's exactly what bothers me," Simon said, his voice growing firmer. "He was my best friend first, but somehow he only calls you now. When's the last time he asked how I'm doing?" Clara looked up from her homework, sensing the tension in the room. Her big brown eyes darted between her father and me, confusion written across her young face. "Daddy, why are you upset?" she asked quietly. "Nothing, baby," I said quickly, shooting Simon a warning look. "Daddy's just had a long day at work." Simon ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as his attempt to stay calm. "I'm not upset, Clara. I just think your mom and I need to talk about boundaries." "Boundaries?" I laughed, the sound coming out sharper than I intended. "Simon, you're being controlling. Rowan is our friend. He's been there for us through everything. When Clara was born, when your dad was in the hospital, when I was struggling with my teaching job, you can't just decide I can't talk to him because you're feeling insecure." My phone buzzed again, and I glanced down to see another message from Rowan. "Thanks for listening tonight. You always know exactly what to say. Simon's lucky to have you." Simon must have caught a glimpse of the screen because his expression darkened. "Can I see that?" "See what?" I clutched the phone closer to my chest. "The message. What did he say that made you smile like that?" "Simon, this is crazy. You want to read my private messages now? What's next, tracking my location?" I stood up from the couch, my voice rising. "I'm not doing anything wrong by maintaining a friendship." Clara's pencil stopped moving across her worksheet. "Mom, you're being loud." "Sorry, sweetheart," I said, forcing my voice to soften. "Why don't you finish your homework in your room? I'll check it before bedtime." As Clara gathered her things and headed down the hall, Simon stepped closer to me. "Eulalia, I'm not trying to control you, but something feels off about this whole situation. The secretive phone calls, the inside jokes I don't understand, the way you light up when he texts, but barely look up when I come home from work." "That's not fair," I protested. "You've been distant for months, working late, coming home exhausted, barely talking to me about anything that matters. Rowan actually listens when I tell him about my day, about the kids in my classroom, about my dreams and fears. When's the last time you asked me how I'm really doing?" Simon's shoulders sagged slightly. "You're right that I've been working a lot. The new client has been demanding, and I've been stressed about making ends meet, But that doesn't mean I don't care about you, about us. Then show it, I said, my voice softening as I saw the hurt in his eyes. Don't attack me for having a friend who actually pays attention to me. My phone buzzed again, and this time Simon was quick enough to see the screen before I could hide it. His face went pale as he read the message aloud. Last night was perfect. Can't wait for our next secret. The room fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and Clara's muffled voice from her bedroom as she talked to her stuffed animals. What secret, Eulalia? Simon's voice was barely above a whisper. I felt my cheeks burn, but I forced a laugh. Oh, that. He's talking about the surprise birthday party we're planning for his sister. You know how paranoid he gets about people finding out about surprises? Simon stared at me for a long moment, his green eyes searching my face. His sister's birthday isn't until December. It's only August. He likes to plan ahead, I said quickly. You know how organized he is. But even as the words left my mouth, I could see that Simon wasn't buying it. The trust that had always existed between us seemed to crack right there in our living room, and I realized that maybe, just maybe, I had let things with Rowan go a little too far. I think I need some air, Simon said quietly, grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair. I'll be back later. As the front door closed behind him, I sank back onto the couch, my phone still clutched in my hand. Rowan's message glowed on the screen, and for the first time, I wondered how it might look to someone else. But surely Simon was overreacting. We were just friends after all, weren't we? The following Sunday, we drove to Simon's parents' house for our weekly family dinner. The tension from our argument earlier in the week hung between us like a thick fog, but I was determined to show everyone that our marriage was fine. Simon had been quieter than usual, more withdrawn, but I convinced myself he was just being dramatic. Helen Finch greeted us at the door with her usual warm smile, though I noticed it seemed a bit strained when she looked at me. Simon's mother had always been polite to me, but lately, I felt like she was watching me more carefully, as if she was trying to figure something out. Eulalia, dear, you look tired, she said as she hugged me. Everything all right? Just busy with the new school year starting, I replied, forcing brightness into my voice. You know how it is with third graders. They keep me on my toes. Simon's younger brother Ben was already in the living room with his wife Tess, their 2-year-old son playing with blocks on the carpet. Ben worked as an accountant and had always been the peacekeeper in the family, while Tess was more outspoken, never hesitating to share her opinions. Uncle Simon, Clara ran to her uncle, who scooped her up in a big hug. I watched my daughter's face light up with genuine joy, and it struck me how much she'd been missing that expression lately when she looked at her father and me. How's my favorite niece? Ben asked, tickling Clara until she giggled. I'm your only niece, she replied with 8-year-old logic, making everyone laugh. As we settled around the dinner table, Helen brought out her famous pot roast, and the conversation flowed around work, school, and neighborhood gossip. I found myself relaxing for the first time in days, enjoying the normalcy of family dinner. Oh, I almost forgot, Helen said as she cleared the dessert plates. I found something interesting while cleaning out the attic yesterday. Our old wedding videos, including yours, Simon, and Eulalia. Would you like to see it? I haven't watched it in years. My stomach clenched involuntarily, but I couldn't figure out why. That sounds lovely, I said, though my voice sounded a bit too high. Simon looked uncomfortable. Mum, I don't think anyone wants to sit through that old thing. Nonsense, Tess chimed in. I love watching wedding videos. They're so romantic, and it's fun to see how young everyone looked. Please, Grandma, Clara added, I want to see Mommy and Daddy get married. Helen was already setting up the old DVD player, and soon our wedding day filled the television screen. There we were, 7 years younger, standing at the altar of St. Mary's Church. I looked radiant in my white dress, Simon handsome in his black tuxedo, both of us glowing with happiness and hope for the future. You two looked so in love, Tess said softly, and I caught her glancing between Simon and me as we sat stiffly on opposite ends of the couch. The video continued through the ceremony, showing our families wiping away tears during the vows, and then transitioned to the reception. The camera captured our first dance, and I remembered how magical that moment had felt, swaying in Simon's arms while, at last, played in the background. "There's Rowan," Ben pointed out as the camera panned across the wedding party. Man, he had even more hair back then. I watched myself on screen, laughing at something Rowan was whispering in my ear during the wedding party dance. The camera lingered on us for a moment, and I noticed something I'd never seen before. Or maybe I'd forgotten. Rowan's hand was resting on the small of my back, and it stayed there longer than it should have, even after the song changed, and we were supposed to switch partners. "Interesting," Tess murmured, and I felt heat rise to my cheeks. "What's interesting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Oh, nothing really. Just the way Rowan was looking at you. Very intense for a best man." Simon reached for the remote and paused the video, rewinding it slightly. The room went completely silent as we all watched the screen again. There it was, clear as day, Rowan's hand lingering on my waist, his fingers splayed possessively across the silk of my dress, his eyes locked on mine, while my new husband danced with his mother just a few feet away. "It's just how we always joke around," I said quickly, but my voice sounded defensive even to my own ears. "Rowan's always been touchy-feely. That's just his personality." Helen's expression had grown cold. "Is it now?" Simon was staring at the frozen image on the screen, his jaw clenched tight. "I never noticed that before." "Noticed what?" I forced a laugh. "You're all reading way too much into a simple dance. We were celebrating, having fun. It was our wedding day, for heaven's sake." But even as I spoke, I could see the doubt growing in everyone's eyes. Ben looked uncomfortable, shifting in his chair and avoiding eye contact. Tess was studying my face with the intensity of a detective. Helen had her arms crossed, her lips pressed into a thin line. Clara, oblivious to the tension, clapped her hands. "Mommy, you look so pretty. And Uncle Rowan looks happy too." "Yes," Helen said quietly. "He certainly does look happy." Simon stood up abruptly, the remote clattering to the coffee table. "I need some air." "Simon, wait," I called after him, but he was already walking toward the back door. "Let him go," Tess said, her voice sharper than usual. "Maybe he needs a minute to process what we all just saw." "What we saw was a wedding dance," I snapped. "Between friends. At my own wedding. I think you're all being ridiculous." "Are we?" Helen asked, her voice carrying a weight I'd never heard before. "Eulalia, I've been watching you for months now, the way you smile at your phone, the way you seem distracted when you're with us. And now, seeing this," she gestured toward the television screen. "Seeing what? A moment from 7 years ago that you're all choosing to misinterpret?" Ben cleared his throat. "Maybe we should just drop this. It's ancient history." "Is it though?" Tess asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like some patterns might be repeating themselves." I stood up, my hands shaking with anger and something else I couldn't quite name. Fear, maybe. "I don't have to listen to this. Clara, get your jacket. We're going home." As I gathered our things, I could feel their eyes on me, judging me, condemning me for something that was perfectly innocent. So what if Rowan had held me a little too long during a dance 7 years ago? So what if we were close friends now? I wasn't doing anything wrong. But as we drove home in silence, Simon's hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles were white. I couldn't shake the image of that frozen moment on the screen. And for the first time, I began to wonder if maybe everyone else could see something I'd been refusing to acknowledge. The week following the disastrous family dinner passed in uncomfortable silence. Simon left for work early and came home late, barely speaking to me beyond the necessities of running a household. Clara seemed to sense the tension and had grown quieter, spending more time in her room with her books and toys. I found myself texting Rowan more frequently, seeking the comfort and understanding that seemed to have evaporated from my own home. He was sympathetic, as always, listening to my complaints about Simon's coldness and his family's unfair judgment. "Meet me at Rosie's cafe after school," his text read on Thursday afternoon. "You sound like you need a friend." I hesitated for a moment, knowing that Simon wouldn't approve, but the thought of going home to another evening of silence was unbearable. I texted back, "See you at 4. Rosie's cafe was a small, intimate place downtown, with mismatched furniture and local artwork covering the walls. Rowan was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 steaming mugs of coffee waiting. "You look exhausted," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. His dark eyes were filled with concern, and I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "I feel exhausted," I admitted. "This whole situation with Simon and his family is wearing me down. They're making me feel like I'm some kind of criminal for having a friendship." Rowan reached across the table and covered my hand with his. His touch was warm, comforting, and I didn't pull away. "You're not doing anything wrong, Eulalia. You're just being yourself, kind, caring, loyal. If Simon can't appreciate that, it's his loss." "But maybe I should try to understand his perspective," I said, though the words felt foreign in my mouth. "Maybe I've been spending too much time talking to you." "Listen to me," Rowan said, his grip on my hand tightening slightly. "You light up when we talk. You laugh. You share your dreams. You become the vibrant woman I've always known you to be. When's the last time Simon made you feel that way?" I thought about it, really thought about it, and couldn't remember. "It's been a while," I admitted quietly. "That's not your fault. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are, who appreciates your intelligence and your humor and your beautiful heart." His thumb traced across my knuckles, sending an unexpected shiver up my arm. "Rowan, we're just friends," I said, but even as I spoke the words, they felt less certain than before. "Are we?" he asked softly. "Because sometimes I think we're both pretending, Eulalia. Pretending that what we have is just friendship, when we both know it's something deeper." My heart was racing, and I knew I should pull my hand away, should make it clear that this conversation was heading in a dangerous direction. But his words felt like a balm to my wounded ego, and I found myself leaning closer instead of pulling back. "I care about you," I said carefully. "You know that. But I'm married, Rowan. I have a daughter, a life." "A life that's making you miserable," he interrupted. "I see it in your eyes, hear it in your voice when you talk about Simon. You're not happy, and you haven't been for a long time." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his words settling between us. Part of me wanted to argue, to defend my marriage and my choices, but another part of me, a part that had been growing stronger with each passing day, whispered that maybe he was right. "I should go," I said finally. "Clara will be wondering where I am." "Of course," Rowan said, but he didn't release my hand immediately. "Eulalia, I want you to have this." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "What is it?" "Just a little something to remind you that someone sees your worth, even if the people at home don't seem to." Inside the box was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a star. It was beautiful, thoughtful, and completely inappropriate for a married woman to accept from a male friend. "Rowan, I can't take this." "Please," he said, "it's just a token of friendship, nothing more." But we both knew it was more than that. The necklace represented a line being crossed, a boundary being dissolved. And as I closed the box and slipped it into my purse, I felt both thrilled and terrified by what I was allowing to happen. That evening, I hid the necklace in my dresser drawer, buried beneath old scarves and forgotten jewelry. But I found myself thinking about it, about the way Rowan had looked at me when he gave it to me, about the things he'd said at the cafe. When Clara came to me before bedtime, her face was troubled. "Mommy, why is Daddy always sad now?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "What makes you think Daddy's sad, sweetheart?" He doesn't smile anymore, and he looks at you funny, like he's trying to figure out a puzzle. And sometimes I hear him talking to Uncle Ben on the phone, and his voice sounds different. I pulled my daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Sometimes grown-ups go through difficult times, but it doesn't mean anything is wrong with you, okay? Daddy and I both love you very much. Are you and Daddy going to get divorced like Emma's parents? The question knocked the breath out of me. Why would you ask that? Because Emma's mom used to talk to someone on the phone all the time, and then her dad found out and they had big fights, and now Emma lives in 2 different houses. I held Clara tighter, my mind racing. How much had she overheard? How much did she understand about the tension in our house? We're not getting divorced, baby. We're just working through some things. But even as I said the words, I wondered if they were true. And later that night, as I lay in bed listening to Simon's steady breathing beside me, I found myself thinking about the necklace hidden in my drawer and the man who had given it to me. The breaking point came 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday that started like any other day. I was in my classroom, helping my 3rd graders with their reading comprehension, when my phone buzzed with a text from Rowan. Without thinking, I glanced at it and smiled at his joke about his morning commute. What I didn't notice was that Simon had decided to surprise me with lunch, and he was standing in my classroom doorway, watching me light up at someone else's message, while barely acknowledging his presence. "Mrs. Finch," one of my students called out, "can you help me with this word?" I quickly put my phone away and focused on teaching, but I could feel Simon's eyes on me for the rest of his brief visit. When the lunch period ended, he left without saying much, just a quiet, "I'll see you at home," that carried more weight than it should have. That evening, the confrontation I'd been dreading finally erupted. "I saw you today," Simon said as soon as Clara was in bed. "In your classroom, smiling at your phone like a teenager with a crush." "I was just checking messages during my break," I replied defensively. "There's nothing wrong with that." "It was him, wasn't it? Rowan?" I didn't answer, which was answer enough. Simon ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen him make countless times when he was frustrated or hurt. "Eulalia, I can't do this anymore. The lies, the secrets, the way you've checked out of our marriage, I feel like I'm living with a stranger." "I haven't lied about anything," I protested, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. There had been small deceptions, omissions, moments when I'd chosen to hide rather than be honest. "Really? What about the necklace?" My blood ran cold. "What necklace?" "The silver one with the star pendant. The one hidden in your dresser drawer that I've never seen you wear. The one that definitely didn't come from me." I felt exposed, caught, and my first instinct was to attack. "You went through my things? You've been spying on me?" "I was looking for the insurance papers you said you'd filed away. I wasn't spying, Eulalia. I was living in my own house, in my own bedroom, and I found evidence that my wife is accepting gifts from another man." The accusation hung between us like a loaded weapon. I could have explained, could have told him about the cafe conversation, and Rowan's insistence that it was just friendship. Instead, I felt cornered and responded with anger. "You're being paranoid and controlling. Rowan is my friend, and friends give each other gifts sometimes. If you weren't so cold and distant, maybe you'd understand the value of friendship." "Cold and distant?" Simon's voice rose, something that rarely happened. "I've been working 60-hour weeks to keep this family afloat, while you've been having an emotional affair with my former best friend." "It's not an affair," I shouted back. "We're friends. We talk. We support each other. Something you seem incapable of doing anymore." "Support each other?" Simon laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call the secret meetings? The hidden gifts? The way you smile at his texts, but barely look at me when I come home?" I felt trapped, cornered by his accusations and my own guilt. So I did what I'd been doing for months. I deflected and blamed him instead. "Maybe if you paid attention to me the way Rowan does, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Maybe if you asked about my day, or my dreams, or what makes me happy, I wouldn't need to find that connection elsewhere." The words hit Simon like physical blows, and I watched his face crumple with hurt and betrayal. But instead of backing down, I pressed on, my anger and self-righteousness building. You want to know the truth? Yes, Rowan makes me feel valued and appreciated. Yes, I enjoy talking to him because he actually listens. And yes, he gave me a necklace because he wanted me to know that someone sees my worth, even if my own husband doesn't. Simon stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something die in his eyes. The love, the hope, the willingness to fight for us. It all just faded away, replaced by a quiet resignation that was somehow worse than his anger. I see, he said quietly. Well, I guess that makes things clearer. He turned and walked toward our bedroom, and I followed him, suddenly scared by his calm acceptance. Simon, wait, I didn't mean it like that. I was just trying to explain. But he was already pulling a suitcase from the closet, methodically packing clothes and toiletries. What are you doing? I'm going to stay at my parents' house for a while. We both need some space to figure out what we want. You're leaving, just like that? He paused in his packing and looked at me with eyes that seemed older than they had that morning. Eulalia, you just told me that another man makes you feel things I don't. You just admitted that you're getting emotional needs met by someone else, someone who's giving you gifts and making you feel special. What exactly am I supposed to do with that information? I wanted to take it all back, to explain that I'd been angry and said things I didn't mean. But the truth was, I had meant them, at least partially. Rowan did make me feel special in ways Simon hadn't in a long time. As Simon finished packing and headed for the door, I felt panic rising in my chest. What about Clara? What am I supposed to tell her? Tell her the truth, he said without turning around. Tell her that Mommy and Daddy need some time apart to figure things out. After he left, I sat in our empty living room and called my mother, seeking comfort and validation. Patricia Moran had always been my champion, always ready to defend me against any criticism. He's being ridiculous, she said after I'd given her my version of events. So you have a close friend. So what? Men can be so insecure about these things. He should trust you. Her support felt good, but it wasn't enough to quiet the growing doubt in my mind. So I posted on social media, crafting a carefully worded message about toxic jealousy and being abandoned by someone who promised to love you through everything. The responses were mixed. Some friends offered support and sympathy. Others seemed to read between the lines and asked pointed questions about what had really happened. And then Tess, Simon's sister-in-law, commented publicly, "Maybe we should hear both sides of the story before judging." Her comment sparked a thread of responses that made me realize how divided our social circle had become. People were choosing sides, and not all of them were choosing mine. That night, as I lay alone in our king-sized bed, I found myself thinking about the events that had led us here. Had I really done anything so wrong? Was caring about a friend, accepting his support and comfort, really such a betrayal? But deep down, in a place I wasn't ready to acknowledge, I knew the answer. I knew that somewhere along the way, I had crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. I had allowed my marriage to become secondary to my friendship with Rowan, and now I was facing the consequences of choices I'd convinced myself were harmless. The next morning, I found a thick manila envelope on the kitchen table, my name written across it in Simon's careful handwriting. Inside were copies of bank statements, phone records, and a note that simply said, "For your lawyer." The law office of Martinez and Associates was located in a glass building downtown, all modern furniture and neutral colors designed to project professionalism and competence. I sat across from Jennifer Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in family law, trying to explain my situation without sounding like the villain in my own story. "So your husband left because of your friendship with his former best friend," she summarized, making notes on a legal pad. "And he's provided you with what he considers evidence of inappropriate behavior." It's not inappropriate, I insisted. We're friends. We talk, we text, we meet for coffee sometimes. There's nothing physical happening. Jennifer looked up from her notes. Mrs. Finch, in divorce proceedings, emotional infidelity can be just as damaging as physical infidelity. Courts recognize that marriages can be destroyed by emotional affairs, even when there's no sexual component. But I haven't had an affair, I protested. I've been lonely in my marriage, and I found comfort in talking to an old friend. That's not a crime. No, it's not a crime, but let's look at what your husband has documented here. She opened the manila envelope Simon had left for me and spread its contents across her desk. The evidence was more extensive than I'd expected. There were phone records showing the frequency and duration of my calls with Rowan, including several that lasted over an hour and took place after midnight. There were credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and cafes where I'd met him, always during times when Simon was at work or traveling. But the most damaging evidence was a series of screenshots from my social media accounts and text messages that Simon had apparently been documenting for months. This text here, Jennifer pointed to one from 3 weeks ago. You wrote, "I wish I could just run away with you sometimes. Life would be so much simpler." How do you think a judge would interpret that? My cheeks burned with embarrassment. I was having a bad day. Simon and I had argued about money, and I was just venting to a friend. And this one, "You make me feel like the woman I used to be before I got lost in being a wife and mother." Mrs. Finch, these messages suggest a level of emotional intimacy that goes beyond friendship. I stared at the printed texts, seeing them through someone else's eyes for the first time. Out of context, stripped of the conversations and circumstances that had led to them, they looked damning. What about this receipt? Jennifer held up a credit card statement. Dinner for two at Romano's, an expensive Italian restaurant, on the same night your husband was out of town for work. You charged $140 for a meal. Rowan was having a crisis with his job. He needed someone to talk to, and I was trying to cheer him up by taking him to a romantic restaurant while your husband was away. The way she said it made it sound sordid, calculated, but it hadn't felt that way at the time. It had felt like helping a friend, like being a good person. There's also this, Jennifer said, producing a photograph I'd never seen before. It showed Rowan and me at that same restaurant, leaning close together across the table, his hand covering mine. We were both laughing, and the intimacy between us was obvious even in a still photograph. Where did this come from? According to the documentation your husband provided, a mutual friend saw you there and took the picture. They sent it to your husband the next day. I felt sick. Someone had been watching us, judging us, reporting back to Simon. The betrayal I felt was quickly replaced by the realization that this was how it looked to other people, like I was having an affair. Mrs. Finch, I need to ask you directly. Are you in love with Rowan Hale? The question hung in the air between us, demanding an honest answer I wasn't sure I was ready to give. I care about him. He's been a good friend to me during a difficult time in my marriage. That's not what I asked. Are you in love with him? I thought about the way my heart raced when I saw his name on my phone, the way I looked forward to our conversations more than anything else in my day, the way I'd started imagining what it would be like to be with someone who truly appreciated me. I don't know, I whispered. Jennifer leaned back in her chair. Mrs. Finch, I'm going to be honest with you. Your husband has a strong case for divorce based on your emotional affair. The evidence he's gathered is extensive and compelling. If this goes to trial, a judge is likely to view your behavior as a breach of your marital vows. What does that mean for me, for Clara? It means you're unlikely to get primary custody of your daughter. It means the court might not award you spousal support. It means your husband could potentially get the house, especially if he can prove that your affair damaged the marriage. The room seemed to spin around me. This couldn't be happening. I was a good mother, a good person. I'd made some mistakes, maybe crossed some lines, but I didn't deserve to lose everything. What are my options? You can fight it, but given the evidence, I wouldn't recommend it. Your best bet is probably to negotiate a settlement that gives you joint custody and some financial support, but you'll need to be prepared to make concessions. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt like I was walking through a nightmare. Everything I'd taken for granted, my home, my daughter, my future, was suddenly uncertain. And all because of a friendship that had maybe, possibly, become something more than I'd been willing to admit. That evening I called Rowan, desperate for the comfort and understanding he'd always provided. "This is all so unfair," I told him, pacing around my empty house. "Simon is making me out to be some kind of monster when all I did was have a friend." "I know, sweetheart," Rowan said, and the endearment sent a shiver through me. "You don't deserve this. You deserve someone who appreciates you, who sees how amazing you are." "Maybe we should stop talking for a while," I said reluctantly, "until this whole divorce thing is settled." There was a long pause. "Is that what you really want?" I thought about it, about going through this legal battle without his support, about facing the judgment and accusations alone. "No," I admitted. "I need you right now. I need someone on my side." "Then I'm here," he said. "Whatever happens, whatever they try to do to you, I'm here." After we hung up, I sat in my living room surrounded by legal documents and evidence of my own choices. For the first time, I began to wonder if maybe everyone else could see something I'd been blind to. Maybe what I'd thought was friendship had become something else entirely. And maybe, just maybe, I was about to lose everything because of it. 3 months later, I sat in the family courtroom wearing my best navy blue suit, trying to project an image of respectability and maternal competence. Across the aisle, Simon sat with his lawyer, looking calm and composed, in a way that made my stomach churn with anxiety. The past few months had been a nightmare of depositions, mediation sessions, and legal maneuvering. My relationship with Rowan had become the central issue in the divorce proceedings, with Simon's lawyer painting me as an unfaithful wife who had prioritized another man over her family. Judge Patricia Hendricks, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the case files spread before her. "This is a dissolution of marriage case with contested custody and asset division. Mrs. Finch, your attorney may present your opening statement." Jennifer Martinez stood up, straightening her jacket. "Your Honor, my client is a devoted mother and elementary school teacher who has been unfairly demonized for maintaining a friendship during a difficult period in her marriage. While Mrs. Finch admits to having a close relationship with Mr. Hale, there has been no physical infidelity, no abandonment of her parental duties, and no behavior that should disqualify her from joint custody of her daughter." Simon's lawyer, David Chen, was a methodical man who had built his reputation on thorough preparation and attention to detail. When it was his turn, he stood and addressed the court with quiet confidence. "Your Honor, this case is about more than friendship. The evidence will show that Mrs. Finch engaged in a sustained emotional affair that damaged her marriage and created an unstable environment for the couple's 8-year-old daughter. Mr. Finch seeks joint custody, fair division of assets, and recognition that his wife's choices led to the breakdown of their marriage." The next several hours were excruciating as David Chen methodically presented the evidence Simon had gathered. The phone records, the restaurant receipts, the photographs, the text messages, all of it laid out in chronological order, telling the story of a friendship that had gradually become something more. "Mrs. Finch," he said during my cross-examination, "you testified that your relationship with Mr. Hale was purely platonic. Yet you accepted expensive gifts from him, including jewelry that you hid from your husband. How do you explain that?" "It was just a friendship gift," I said, my voice sounding weak even to my own ears. "Rowan was trying to cheer me up during a difficult time. A difficult time that you created by prioritizing your relationship with him over your marriage." "Objection," Jennifer called out. "Argumentative." "Sustained," Judge Hendricks said. Mr. Chen, please rephrase. Mrs. Finch, how many evenings per week would you estimate you spent texting or talking to Mr. Hale during the 6 months before your separation? I thought about it, trying to minimize the number in my mind. Maybe 3 or 4 evenings. According to these phone records, you contacted Mr. Hale every single day for 6 months, with conversations often lasting over an hour. Does that seem consistent with your testimony? I felt trapped, caught between the truth and my desire to minimize what had happened. I may have underestimated. We talked frequently because he was going through some personal issues. Personal issues that required more of your time and attention than your own husband and daughter received. The question hung in the air, and I realized I had no good answer, because the truth was, I had been giving Rowan more emotional energy than I'd been giving my own family. When Simon took the stand, his testimony was calm and factual, but I could see the pain in his eyes as he described watching our marriage deteriorate. I tried to talk to Eulalia about my concerns, he said. I asked her to set boundaries with Rowan, to prioritize our relationship, but she became defensive and accused me of being controlling. She told me that Rowan made her feel valued in ways I didn't. How did that make you feel? David Chen asked. Devastated, Simon said quietly. I realized that my wife was getting her emotional needs met by another man, and that she preferred his company to mine. The most damaging moment came when they played a recording I didn't know existed. Apparently, Clara had been in the car when I was talking to Rowan on speakerphone, and Simon's dash camera had captured the conversation. My voice filled the courtroom. I just wish I could start over sometimes, with someone who really gets me, who sees me as more than just a wife and mother. And Rowan's response, you could, Eulalia, you could start over with me. The silence that followed was deafening, and I felt the weight of everyone's judgment pressing down on me. When it came time for my testimony, I tried to explain my side of the story, to make them understand that I'd never meant for things to go so far. I was lonely, I said, tears streaming down my face. My marriage felt empty, and Rowan was there for me. He listened to me, supported me, made me feel like I mattered. I never intended for it to become inappropriate. But it did become inappropriate, didn't it? David Chen asked gently. You fell in love with him. I looked across the courtroom at Simon, at the man I'd married 9 years ago, the father of my daughter, the person whose trust I'd betrayed. And I finally told the truth. Yes, I whispered. I think I did. Judge Hendricks took a recess to review all the evidence and testimony. When she returned, her expression was grave. This court finds that Mrs. Finch engaged in conduct that was detrimental to her marriage and family. While there was no physical adultery, the evidence clearly shows an emotional affair that lasted for months and ultimately destroyed the marital relationship. My heart sank as she continued. However, the court also finds that Mrs. Finch is a capable mother who loves her daughter. Therefore, the court awards joint physical custody, with Clara spending equal time with both parents. The marital home will be sold and the proceeds divided equally. Mrs. Finch will receive limited spousal support for 2 years to allow her to establish financial independence. As the gavel came down, I realized that my choices had cost me everything I'd taken for granted. My marriage was over, my home would be sold, and my daughter would grow up shuttling between 2 houses because I'd been unable to resist the attention of another man. Walking out of the courthouse, I saw Simon talking quietly with his parents and Clara. My daughter looked confused and sad, and I knew that no matter what happened next, she would carry the scars of my decisions for the rest of her life. Rowan was waiting for me by my car, offering comfort and support as he always had. But for the first time, his presence didn't make me feel better. Instead, I looked at him and saw the cost of our relationship written across the faces of everyone I'd hurt. Was it worth it? I asked him quietly. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away, because I finally understood what everyone else had seen months ago, that what we'd called friendship had been something else entirely, something that had cost me my family, my home, and my self-respect. As I drove away from the courthouse alone, the legal documents on my passenger seat serving as a reminder of the consequences of my choices, I realized that sometimes the price of getting what you think you want is losing everything you actually need.